Hello, and welcome to the symplr Education Series webinar titled MSP Taskforce Series, Top Dollar, Bottom Line, Why Payment Enrollment Matters. We will have time at the end of this session for a formal Q&A. Please feel free to submit them at any time during the chat box on the right side of your screen. We have submitted this program for NAM CEU credits and are awaiting their approval. Upon receiving approval, we will send that out via an email. You will also receive an email with the recording of this webinar and its slides within 4 business days after the conclusion of this webinar. We are so excited to have Donna Goestenkors and her team presenting this month. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to her now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Callie. Hello and welcome to another learning program in our successful MSP Taskforce series. My name is Donna Goestenkors, for those who don't know me yet, and it's my sincere pleasure to join each of you along with my co-presenters for today's session, which is dedicated to the payer enrollment specialist. My first co-presenter is someone many of you have heard before, Dina Solias. She is very knowledgeable, and our education work together over the last 7 years has resulted in the mass education and production of the industry's first ever enrollment process model, which you will hear about today firsthand from Dina. Dina, please take a moment to welcome our listeners.
Thank you, Donna, Callie, and symplr for this wonderful opportunity to share from our experiences. I'm excited today for our program and hope everybody enjoys and learns from the information.
Great, thanks, Dina. My second co-presenter is someone I have known for many years. She recently joined my education team, and you will hear her knowledge and passion about her enrollment work bubble directly from her lips. Yesenia, how about sharing one of your very enthusiastic greetings with our colleagues?
Thank you, Donna. Hi, everyone. I'm so grateful you joined us today, and I'm very excited, as usual, to be with Dina and Donna in today's education session.
Great. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you the Payer Enrollment Institute. It's a division of TeamMed Global Consulting, and it serves to meet the needs of payer enrollment executives, specialists, and MSPs alike by offering another first of its kind learning, training, and staffing service. Your speakers team today are just a few of the enrollment faculty that are part of this institute. And this platform, along with symplr's sponsorship for this series, underscores the value of working together to hear the voice and the needs of MSPs. And then it's our responsibility to create the resources that are going to help you grow both professionally as well as advance your career. Today's sessions will dig deeper, not only in enrollment processes, but what we do as MSPs and enrollment specialists impact the bottom line. So we're going to describe, the links between enrollment and the financial aspect of an organization. We're going to identify these opportunities that are going to improve your effectiveness about the process that you're following, and then we're going to share with you best practices that will really help you as well as your organizations understand the effectiveness of a high-performing payer enrollment area. Now, really, let's look at the bottom line of what this program is about and really what payer enrollment is about. It's how our talent equates to the value we're bringing to an organization, and that value directly results in the dollars lost or made within an organization. And we, as MSPs and enrollment specialists, we want to be part of that value in dollars made team. So any goal of a high-performing payer enrollment function is really about understanding that process, right? It's about really wanting to be sure that what we do is going to speed up that payer enrollment process. And how do we do it? It's through the design and the structure on the workflow you're using to process your enrollment applications. And then that design and structure will help lead us into getting these providers enrolled and credentialed more quickly with the payers. And then the master goal of any organization is how can we figure out how we can get paid as quickly as possible. And all of these components, all of these little goals in the master goal really lead us into how we as enrollment specialists and MSPs perform, because performance really does matter. How effective we understand the basic principles of enrollment, how we're able to put these pieces of structure together to design a process that's going to be as efficient as possible. So the work of Dina and Yesenia and myself is always to be helping you prepare to keep your needle in that excellent range. And it really is based upon performance. And as we've learned in other educational programs, right, that performance is based upon your competence, your level of competence, the knowledge that you acquire, the skills that you practice, and your ability to demonstrate your knowledge and your skills. And those skills efficiencies really fall into, from the enrollment perspective, 3 core categories. So if you look at this list that's provided to you, it's a growing list as our industry continues to evolve and change, but this growing list really centers on 3 core areas of competence. We have to have a working knowledge of what the enrollment process really means and the requirements and expectations from our stakeholders. We know that we have to be incorporating technologies in how we're managing that enrollment function, and then knowing the importance and the critical nature of developing our relationships with our key stakeholders. So understanding that those 3 competencies really are the backbone of payer enrollment sort of turns a light on where we can focus and where our opportunities of growth may lie. And as we look at, that bottom line being that dollars and how we're going to collect those dollars, we have to understand that organizations are trying to maximize their reimbursements. It doesn't matter what type of organization, but any way and any methodology that we work within the parameters and the requirements that we're expected to follow, and then being able to really improve and streamline our processes so we're bringing as many dollars using our talent, as many dollars into that department or into that organization as possible. That's how we're going to get noticed in a good way. And bringing those dollars into an organization, specifically relating to payer enrollment, it's really about linking our process with the reimbursements of organizations and what those practices are. So from this particular point, I'm going to ask Dina, can you elaborate a little bit more on the importance of the structure and what that really means, that valuable link?
Thank you, Donna, and thank you for setting me up for the great intro into the next portion of our program, where I will go ahead and explain the process that we've broken down into very specific steps for a payer enrollment specialist to take. So before I do that, I'd like to just make a clear definition of payer enrollment. The payer enrollment defined is the process of applying to health insurance plans for inclusion into provider networks to enable reimbursement for services rendered. So I always feel it's important to establish a clear definition before going into the process, because there has been confusion between credentialing and enrollment. So moving on to the next slide, we can break down the enrollment process model into, first we're taking a look at this screen, we're taking a look at the different types of payers that enrollment specialists and organizations can enroll. So the first type would be the federal programs, which would be Medicare. The second type would be state programs, which would be Medicaid, and in California, it's called Medi-Cal. And the third type of payer would be private or commercial. Now, this is really just a high-level overview of basic payer types. There are more payer types, but in overall, these are generally speaking the types of payers that organizations enroll in. And private and commercial would be United Healthcare, Aetna, Cigna, those types of payers. So the next slide breaks down the enrollment process really into two different categories. You've got your processes in the pre-enrollment stage, and then you've got processes that we do in the post-enrollment stage. And in the pre-enrollment stage, what we do is we broken very specific steps. Now, these steps might not be the same for every single payer that you deal with as an enrollment specialist, but generally speaking, the first step would be to determine which plans you would enroll in. And sometimes this can be predetermined depending on your situation in your organization. They can be predetermined by your organization. An example would be if you're working for an organization in a specific area that only enrolls with certain payers, then this step would probably already be taken care of for you. In the case of myself, I work with clients, and sometimes I have to figure out which plans my clients need to enroll in. So I help establish a payer list and help, and an example of this would be establishing a payer list, figuring out which region the provider serves. That would be inclusive of this step. And the next step would be contacting the payers and asking questions. So when I'm working with payers and my clients, I usually have a set of questions that I contact the payer and ask as far as their processes, what their processing time frame, what their preferred submission method is, if it's not clearly stated on their website. I do a little research first for payers just to make sure that there's no special requirements, or if there are special requirements, there are some questions that are helpful to find out ahead of time that will help make the process smoother. And the third step is that you're collecting the provider information, their documents, their demographic information, anything pertinent that would be asked for on applications. You want to gather that ahead of time. The next step would be to complete the application. I know this seems very elementary, but this step could be taken earlier in the process. Some payers, just depending on what their requirements are and what their methods are, sometimes you might be completing a mini application as a prior step, and then sometimes there might be an application a little bit later in the process. But this, in the basic steps, this would be your next step, is to obtain and complete the application. And then step 5. Step 5 is really, it depends on your payer. So when I was creating this process list, this typically for my situation, what I deal with my clients, is a step that I take when dealing with payers that might have a limited or narrow network. So some payers will ask for, as part of their process, can you submit a letter of interest? If their network is closed and they don't automatically accept all provider types that you're dealing with. So this letter of interest would detail what with the provider's demographic information, their NPI, their tax ID, their legal business name, excuse me, any pertinent information about the provider, if they provide specific services to a specific patient demographic, their specialty, what types of networks they're interested in joining. This letter of interest would fall into this step, step 5. And then step 6, you would be submitting your enrollment packet to the payer. Step 7, you would follow up until the determination is made. And so this step can take, this step could take weeks. Sometimes you will submit an enrollment application to a payer, and it can seem like it takes forever for you to get a response to make sure confirm it was received and that it's being worked on. Usually what I like to do is once I submit an application, I like to follow up. It depends on the submission method. Usually if I'm submitting it via an email, I like to ask for a confirmation from who I'm submitting it to, just a quick response back that they've received it. That's a good practice to implement. And then you want to follow up on it regularly to make sure that things are moving along quickly, that they're consistent, that progress is made consistently, and making sure that if there's anything that's required from the payer side, there could be additional information, just making sure that you follow up and make sure all the way through to processing that all of the steps have been taken. And then step 8, network denials. So hopefully step 8 would be an acceptance and approval. But if a payer denies the enrollment for any type of reason, there could be a variety of reasons that a payer could deny an application. There could be the network could be full at capacity. There could be errors or omissions or some type of reason why the payer is not accepting the application. So then you would go on to there's a series of other things you might be able to do to get past those hurdles and move to the next step. If we move to the next slide. So assuming that your provider, is enrolled, the post-enrollment steps are outlined in this slide. So what you'd need to do would be to obtain proof of enrollment. And this could be in the form of a letter, this could be in the form of, sometimes I've had it in the form of an email, some type of a confirmation that the payer will send you to confirm the enrollment with an effective date. And the next step in the post-enrollment process would be to implement it with your billing department. So an example of this would be maybe you might need to help establish some electronic funds transfer agreement. Maybe that wasn't taken care of in the initial enrollment. You might need to help convey the information to stakeholders that are needing the information, such as the billing department, the accounting department, your technology department. If there's any type of information that would need to be conveyed about the payer to implement so that the provider can start billing, this would be an example of step 2. And then step 3 would be to record or load the new contract and all of its information into your database. So if you're using a credentialing software, this might be a step that you would take to load the effective date, where maybe if there's an address where claims get sent, if you're helping to facilitate other stakeholder who might need that information, this would be examples of step 3. And then step 4 would just be maintenance for continued enrollment. So an example of this would be revalidations, changes of information, making sure that you keep up anything that changes, any type of communication that the payer might send to the provider for requests for additional information or updated information, such as a certificate of insurance, an updated license, something to that effect. So once you're fully enrolled, these are the steps in the post-enrollment process that would be taken. In the next section, I just want to go over some why your role as an MSP matters, or an enrollment specialist. So this slide shows examples of what enrollment specialists do to help support the fiscal health of the organization and really help make an impact on the bottom line. So things that that enrollment specialists do that we might not even realize that help support the bottom line. Things like you do your initial payer research and your due diligence. You find resources. You process your enrollments efficiently and timely for your providers. You secure important payer contracts. Now, this is important because if you've got payers that are a big impact on your provider, you help support the organization by getting those payer contracts. You establish and negotiate reimbursement rates and pricing. Enrollment specialists help establish payer, depending on your organization, payer web portal usage and maintenance. I know I help my provider clients with these types of processes. And you help support EFT setups, which would be electronic funds transfer agreements. You help coordinate billing and accounting departments and electronic health records team. All of these bullet points are examples of what enrollment specialists do to really help connect that the missing link from between the process all the way through to the bottom line. So you use your communication skills to serve as a liaison between, you've got internal stakeholders, you've got providers, you're dealing with credentialing departments in the medical staff services office, you're dealing with billing, you can deal with HR, IT. These are all examples of your communication skills and who you are usually dealing with throughout your day throughout the process. You've got external stakeholders. So we're dealing with providers, we're dealing with payers, we have IPAs sometimes we have to deal with, you're dealing with the Medicare MACs, NPEs, you're dealing with a lot of different stakeholders, and all of this helps support the process. You're working with your IT department sometimes to make sure that provider profiles are built correctly. You're working with billing department to research and resolve claim denials. I know that I frequently have to do that when I'm working with clients. And then lastly, this slide, more examples. You're helping keep track of expirables. You're helping complete revalidations, recredentialing, researching and expanding into new payer markets. That's an important one. You're making sure that your providers all of their information is in compliance with every payer requirement, and this is ongoing as long as your enrollment is in existence. And you're working with payers to add new and missing network plans. Sometimes there can be plans that you might not be aware of, or new plans that the payer offers that might need to be added once the contract is in place. You're working with payers to add, there are some claims payments are directly tied to patient outcomes and value-based reimbursement. So this is another example of how enrollment specialists really help support the organization and make an impact on the organization's bottom line.
And Dina, this is Donna speaking. The interesting thing is we were building this program. Oftentimes when credentialing experts begin to describe their process, there are core things indeed that the credentialer does, but there's so many moving parts. And as we were delineating, these different steps that you shared in this slide and the 3 previous slides, it just tells you it's not always what it appears at face value. There's lots of moving parts that an enrollment specialist must be managing proactively as well as ongoing. So this was this series of slides, I thought, really dug deeper into the role of the enrollment specialist. And there's lots of commonalities, too, from a credentialing standpoint on things that we're responsible doing, like tracking expirables and making sure we do research prior to beginning our developing our clinical privilege forms, etc. So the reason I wanted to kind of highlight this section is that there are transferable skills, and oftentimes I will get questions from individuals, MSPs, who have spent a bulk of their career involved in credentialing. But I'm hoping that the sharing of this information over the last several slides can really convey to our listeners that there indeed are transferable skills between these two areas of specialty, payer enrollment, as well as credentialing.
Absolutely, Donna. And now with this, I'd like to turn over the next section to Yesenia. She's going to describe the impact on MSP's direct impact on reimbursement.
Thank you so much, Dina and Donna. I agree. That was some fantastic information for MSPs that are doing provider and payer enrollment. So one of the things that I find unfortunate is that when provider organizations think about the revenue cycle, they don't always include payer enrollment, right? They have payer enrollment as like the other, the outlier, and they don't really see it as how we impact the revenue cycle. But truly, payer enrollment is the cog that kicks off a healthy revenue cycle. As an MSP, you understand why enrollment specialists are a very key component to a healthy dollar stream. Fiscal wellness. So obviously, the revenue cycle is fiscal wellness. Revenue versus debt. What have we built out? What have we collected? What is still owed? What is rejected? And how does the enrollment and credentialing portion fit into this? As Dina mentioned a few slides back, determine the desired results. Well, you can determine desired results if we know what the organization goals are. In terms of enrollment, in terms of serving the population, we need to clarify all of that so that we get it from the beginning, even before we start the pre-enrollment process that Dina walked us through. Again, research keeps coming up, so we have to clarify research results. We have to identify programs and services. And part of knowing who the organization is, there's specific clinical things and specialties and populations and diagnosis. All of this, there's so much learning to do, there's so much growing to always do and understand that all of this impacts the fiscal wellness, value program-based. For some of us, this sounds a little scary because this is all we're seeing now. Everything is going to be value-based. Everyone is moving this way. It's already here. It's already impacting the organizations we're working with. And so how do we as MSPs, constant learners and growers, how do we make sure that we're clarifying this, we're identifying this, and fitting it into our daily work? Allocate resources based on priorities. Well, one thing about MSP.
Excuse me, Yesenia.
Yes.
Excuse me. I'm going to ask Callie if there's anything technically she can do on her end. I am hearing a little bit of feedback. I hope that that's not too distracting for you, Yesenia, in your presentation. You may not hear it.
I'm okay on this side. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So as I was saying, and even Donna reviewed it when we looked at that core competence that TMG has in the beginning of our presentation. One of the things that MSPs are very, very great at is we're extremely resourceful, right? We know exactly how to move things around to be most efficient and most effective. So not to give ourselves a pat on the back, but yes, let's go ahead and pat ourselves on the back. So improving effectiveness in our process. As I've mentioned, we are stars at this. We always are driven professionals. We look for efficiencies. And then when we see the gaps, what do? We make a checklist or maybe 100 checklists and figure out how we're going to fill those gaps. We're going to figure out how to review the process, review the structure that's in place, and then rewrite it or rework it so that it makes sense. So a quality review process is always necessary in your enrollment processes. Your enrollment policies. If you find that improvements should be made, go for it, right? Who's going to stop you? You're going to always do it keeping in mind the fiscal wellness, healthy revenue stream. And as usual, you keep a revenue process in place so that you can make adjustments and improvements as you go along. Enrollment best practices that impact the bottom line. I'm going to try to keep myself calm here because I usually get so excited. I want to talk at 100 miles a minute, right? So I'm going to try to keep myself calm. Even when Dina and Donna and myself are talking, They have to slow me down because I just get so excited with everything that we discuss together and all the processes we work on. So understanding key common enrollment terms and acronyms. Oh, how will this happen in our lifetime, right? There's always new acronyms coming in our industry. And we seem to talk to them, to normal, everyday people. We bring them up and they're looking at us like, what are you talking about? It's because we're speaking the healthcare acronyms, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the whole world is going to speak our language. So we have to keep that in mind. Sometimes you're talking to a payer thinking they understand these acronyms, but they have their own set of acronyms. And, you know, PAR might mean something different for them as it means for us. INN, which is in network, and PAR, in this particular example I'm discussing, means participating. So we have to be clear that we're understanding each other's languages, whether we're communicating internally or externally, depending if it's payers or if it's our IT team, our recruiting team. Understand account profiles. Yes, understand your CAQH. And then CAQH is it the provider CAQH or is it your practice management CAQH? So there's two separate there. And sometimes when speaking to a payer, you have to remember, let me think about it as, are they thinking about it from a provider standpoint or are they thinking about it from a practice management standpoint? So again, it's communication skills as listed on our core competence. It's part of the relationship skills. The NPES account, I always call it NPPES, and that drives people a little bit crazy. I guess it takes too long to say NPPS, so everybody is used to NPES. PAYCO's account, I've heard it called PICOs. You have to understand the impact that all of these profiles and accounts have on enrollment, and therefore not only enrollment, and the revenue cycle. Familiarize yourself with payers and their processes. Sometimes it feels like that could be impossible, but it's not, because you are doing this every single day. So you know, oh, okay, United Healthcare always has to see credentialing contact information on the CAQH account, always. They are the ones that will send it back and be like, hey, this application doesn't have a credentialing contact, or it says, hey, you have Susie on this application, but Donna is listed on the CAQH account, so you have to make those match. So you kind of get to see those little quirky things from the payers as you go along, and then you want to keep that in mind, keep that written process, and not only that, but then keep your team informed. Remember, with this payer, they're the ones that have this quirky thing, so let's keep that in mind. Remember to review that process with them. Yeah, all those different, unique, as if we don't have enough to worry about, right? But let's keep those quirks in mind. And then other little things like, is it an online? And as Dina mentioned, is it that two-sheet pre-application, and then they'll send you the full application? You know, all these little things that are different. Is it an individual application? Is it a roster? And then is it a roster? Will they accept the templates that you already have in your system, or is it a very unique roster and they absolutely will not take one of your rosters? It has to be their template, and that's it. And then who are you emailing it to, faxing it to? Who's your one-on-one contact? Who needs to sign? What are the required attachments? Generally, you're pretty aware that they all want the W-9. They all want that professional license and any kind of board certifications and things of that nature. So you have a pretty standard packet of what they're looking for, and then you'll have those special outliers. The time frames, that is probably the number one, what should I say, quote unquote, killer question that we get. Why do they take so long? Why aren't they rushing? Every time we have a payer enrollment, like that is a number one. Like, what is the time frame? Can they just all please either go to 30 days, or can they all please go to 45? Just give us one date or one timeline, and it would be an ideal world for our enrollment specialists if that would happen. But unfortunately, we have to learn it by the payer. This payer does 60, this payer does 90. So that's another little tidbit to put in those processes. To continue with effectiveness tips, you have to understand how to create an effective letter of interest. And thankfully, Dina is a good friend of mine, and she's helped me create and improve the letter of interest that I have for people that I've worked with. So there are some key elements that you need in your letter of interest. One of them being, who are the members that you're serving or that your provider or your organization is serving? What is the specialties? What are the special diagnoses they're serving? What is the population they're serving? What languages are spoken? There's a lot of great information that you need on there to have a robust letter of interest. And then use your communication skills to negotiate reimbursement rates. Sometimes when Dina and I speak to organizations and providers, they're pretty surprised that we can actually do this. Yes, we have the power to negotiate rates. As an MSP, you're going to grow, that core competence, that relationship skill is going to be part of emotional intelligence, communication skills, all of that is what MSPs strive for, and we have on our goal list, right? Our personal and professional improvement list. You can do that. Again, same way, you basically can use your letter of interest as your speaking points. When you communicate with your payers, you can say, these are the members that we serve per month. These are the members that we serve per year. And these are the special diagnoses that we serve. This is the population that we serve. We have a diverse group of providers. We have a diverse group of healthcare professionals serving at the reception, serving at billing, serving at every entry, at every level of our organization. So there's a lot of great speaking points that you can work with these payers on to work with those reimbursement rates. And then sometimes you have to give yourself a 1 year. Let's say at the beginning of that contract, they won't renegotiate. Let's say they'll give you 365 days to renegotiate. Well, then you have even more numbers, right? You have those numbers that'll say, these are how many of your members. You can be very specific and say, this is how many members we served in your particular network, and this is what we did. So that is a very strong negotiating tool. Understand your options for closed panels. I'm sorry to keep sounding redundant, but the letter of interest is going to be a great bargaining tool for this. If you have a closed panel that says absolutely not, well, then you're going to, again, keep in mind and make it known to them what the specialties you serve, the population that you're serving, the diversity on your team, the languages spoken, the accreditations, awards, and accolades of your team. All of these are going to very much serve you to get into those closed panels. And know how to maintain your enrollment once approved. Exactly what Dina was mentioning. We track expirables, right? We're good at revalidations. We're great at recredentialing. All of this makes us so valuable to our team and to that bottom line, that big money chunk that Donna showed us at the beginning of the presentation. And then we're going to automate whenever possible. And sometimes, depending on the size of your organization, we do have to consider the budget. Sometimes there's not a lot of funds for this. But when there is, take your time to do the research and pick a good software. You're not just going to go for the first one. No, you're going to make calls. You're going to have those 1-hour meetings, go through the process of reviewing every bit and everything that you want. You're going to write down everything that your organization needs and what you're currently doing now and what needs to be improved. And again, if you don't have the budget for it, a full Adobe Acrobat suite is fantastic for just doing those pre-applications and full applications on your computer without having to print, manually complete and then fax over. It could all just be done in one sitting. Things to watch out for. Really, this list could really be never ending, right? Because every day we have our checklist. That's okay. Every day we say we're going to have our checklist done. This is what I'm going to do at 8 a.m. and then I'm going to complete all these 105 things by 5 p.m. But it's really hilarious because our checklist gets recreated every single day with all the things that come up. So a lot of the things to watch out for, we've mentioned the expired licensure insurance, anything that's we're always tracking to update, use of correct forms. So this is one thing that I've learned. Every payer has a specific date. So let's say, I'm just going to throw out payer ABC. They look at their contract every June 30th, right? They look to see if there's any revisions that they need to make. And so by July 30th, they'll implement any updates. This is just a very loose example. So then that payer ABC every July, if they have any revisions to their forms, they'll be out July 30th. So that's another thing that you must track. to make sure that you're always using the most updated form. Know when that particular payer updates their forms, and then you always have the most updated information. We're great at catching omissions and errors. We're great at highlighting things that need to be done. We know what supporting documentation based on payers. And then one of the big ones that Dina also mentioned was the lack of response, right? We are always like the follow-up king and queen. We constantly call, we're emailing, we even fax, or we even call a colleague of theirs that, you know, sits next to them or works in the same department to try to catch them, right? We're like these little sleuths. So you are great at that, and that is why you're so valuable to the bottom line. There's so much that you do to keep that healthy revenue stream. Another point that kind of drives us nuts is the expired passwords and the redoing and re-registering and redoing this password. And sometimes the provider's not always helpful in this, so you have to really work on it and really then start hounding them to help you and assist these. So there are particular software and application that you can use. You just have to do your research on what's secure, what's compliant, and then you can just also do the old-fashioned spreadsheet as long as it's password protected. Technology benefits. Again, we're always trying to keep that budget in mind because some of us work for organizations that can easily, you know, allocate a decent budget for this. And other of us, like we might be working for a solo practice or a practice with 3 providers and they're fairly new. So there isn't the big dollars for it. So again, it's always to improve efficiencies, improve effectiveness, increase productivity, eliminate a lot of waste, eliminate paper. I know some of us are really attached and love our paper, but as much as possible, we want to reduce that. But we can't make a haste decision, right? We have to really take our time, research, sit down, go through all of our checklists, everything that we need. And then we also have to have a system that helps us communicate with our internal and external stakeholders. So working with our IT team to really understand what they need to see, how they need to get it, working with our recruiting team to understand when they're recruiting, this is what we really need them to stress in terms of what enrollment needs. And so all of this that we're looking for in a technology system, we have to make sure that it also helps us be better communicators. Resources. This list can also be endless. I've had to recently remove some of the listservs that I'm attached to because they like fill up the inbox, right? And some of it is just redundant. So although there are limitless resources, you also want to be very selective on who you're letting in your inbox and who you're really following because you want the most information that will most positively impact your daily work. So of course your peers. We have 2 wonderful peers right on this presentation today, Dina and Donna. Please follow all of us on LinkedIn and follow us on their social media and follow TMG. We are constantly putting stuff out there to keep you informed. As soon as we get information, our first thought is like, okay, how do we get it out there? How do we get it to everyone? We want everyone to know this. We need them to start using this or start learning about this. That is what we've always been like, thankfully. I think you will never stop us from being like that. We continue to want to put the info out there all the time. Obviously, NAMS and your local association of NAMS, Medicare website, always join that CMS alert. And then my local Medicaid constantly puts out those newsletters, email blasts that impact all different specialties. And the reason I like it is because it's very much broken down by specialty. It's very much broken down by population. It's very much broken down by county. So it's really, really nice. So that is somewhere that you could look. Yes, your MAC is also very informative. There are things on that your MAC will tell you that have changed in terms of the PICOS account and how it's going to impact when you go log in there and do an enrollment. Payer websites, of course, they have become much better at doing their email blasts. They've become much better at those webinar sessions. So please join those. Decision Health, of course, and Decision Health also has an enrollment specialist certificate that I believe Dina has taken. So that's another option there. Directory of U.S. Health Plans, which is the aishealth.com. And of course, I've mentioned, I cannot stress enough, TeamMed Global, Sonoma Credentialing.
Yesenia, before you advance to your next slide, Decision Health, that certificate program, is that focused primarily on government enrollment?
Yes, it's specifically focused on Medicare enrollment. So it's not very broad, it's not extensive, it's also not expensive, and I think that's why, because it's just a very small portion of what enrollment specialists do.
Okay, and then again, this is more of an operations question because yes, it is true. We all get hundreds of emails a day, literally. When you ask to be added to a listserv, okay, is there a way that you personally regulate your inbox so they go automatically into a resource folder, or do you get them individually and then you just process them as you process that particular email?
So usually what I do is I let them come to my inbox, and once I see what type of information they're sending, then I create a rule to say, okay, this particular email address I want to be dumped in this folder. But
Excellent.
First, I kind of do the screening where I'm like, okay, this is going to work for me or this is not going to work for me. And if it does, then I create the rule afterwards to dump it into a particular folder in my Outlook.
Okay, that's very helpful because people always want to know, well, how do you do it? So thanks for sharing that. I've recently been receiving emails from, I think it's called Becker's, and they have payer enrollment information in this Becker's newsletter. Is that something that you've seen or you or Dina have seen?
Yes, Becker's, I actually do like. They seem to have a lot of breaking news, like when there's mergers and acquisitions. They seem to be one of the first to put it out there to all of us. So I do like Becker's.
Okay.
I do.
And you do too, Dina? You get that?
I do. I also like Rev Cycle Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say again?
Rev Cycle Intelligence.
Great. So those are two additional resources for those of you who are interested in making sure you stay current on what's happening in the payer enrollment industry. So Yesenia, you've done a really good job identifying, tips and shortcuts to help us get to that bottom line, knowing all the steps that we take in following our structure and process. Can you give us some bottom line final best practice tips?
Yes. So prepare and start early. So that means building a strong relationship with your onboarding and recruiting team so that they understand what you as an enrollment specialist would need from them when they're out there onboarding and recruiting providers. Organize provider and payer information efficiently? Absolutely, because we have so much information, right? There's so much and it seems like nonstop. So you have to structure that very well. Understand the patient population served. That's huge. We've talked about research from the beginning today. You have to know who your organization is serving, what are the diagnoses they're serving, what are the specialties. That is very important and valuable. And then research your payers and their unique requirements. You understand the standard requirements, but then there's those little quirks that you have to understand. And then always have a quality review process, because as an MSP, you're always looking to be more efficient and most effective. Follow up consistently, even if you have to buy yourself a little crown for being the follow-up king or queen. You have to call. You have to make that call. You have to hound them. You have to talk to them, and eventually they'll be forced to be your friend, so they know they have to respond to you.
And
develop
again,
strong
Yesenia,
working. Yes.
I'm sorry. Again, Yesenia, based upon what Dina said in our structure model, would you say also your experience is where a bulk of your time is spent in the payer enrollment process is doing your follow-ups?
Absolutely. Okay. And part of the follow-up is checking that payer directory, right? Like if you get that approval, after that approval letter, then you're like, okay, they said I'm in here and they said I'm in 5-1, so let me go to that directory and let me see if that provider is in here. Is that specialty correct? Is that practice address correct? That's part of that follow-up that you're doing. And then if it's not correct, you're going back and saying, okay, I have this approval letter that you sent me, it's 5-1, and I'm on your directory, and it shows something different. So yes, and then the next part that we've mentioned from our core competence section is develop strong work relationships with all holders, and the work relationships requires a lot of emotional intelligence. So you want to help grow those tools that you have. Utilize technology to increase enrollment. Even if you're in a limited budget, you can still increase technology by using Adobe, by using those fill-in forms, and utilizing the online portals and the email more than the paper. And with all of these, if you implement all of these and continue to grow and continue to look at effectiveness and efficiencies, you're always going to make a positive outcome. You're always going to have a healthy revenue stream. And Donna, I'm going to pass it to you to close us out.
Okay. Well, the information that we've shared, Dina, Yesenia, and I, some of it, for those of you who are such loyal followers, and we really appreciate that, some of it is reminders, right? Because we do this all day long, and it's good to know that there's a structure that we're following when we're doing our daily work. But a lot of the information shared within this particular session is new information as well. So it's taking those pieces and understanding your practices and incorporating these new pieces of information, the steps and the tips. Again, you do these so automatic. Many of you do these things so automatic. You don't stop to think, oh my gosh, I have to do all of these things. That's why I'm tired at the end of the day. So putting that beautiful practice, the things that work so well, and incorporating these new tips that we've provided, I think truly makes us the most valuable to our organization. And with any incorporation of new ideas, new concepts, we as MSPs and enrollment specialists, we have to be willing to take a risk. And that risk requires change, right? So really, on behalf of all of your speakers today, we thank you for participating in these educational events. We thank you for taking information back, sharing it with your colleagues and team members, because when we all work together, we are influencing the industry to be part of that positive change that we work so hard on. We want to make sure that the work that we're investing in every day really is mattering, and that what we're doing has value. We don't want to just go through the motions. We want to believe that the work that we're investing in has an impact on a process or on approvals. So with that, we want to thank you for being part of that change. Now, our next task force session is going to be in August. You'll see on your screen that it is going to be about practice management and how important it is for those of us who are on the call, perhaps working in a specialty or a multi-specialty group practice, right? That we might be doing enrollment, we might be doing credentialing, but we have to make sure that we understand that quality is infiltrating everything that we do, not only in healthcare, but in business in general. And that's why creating measurements and understanding how a practice is going to be measured to maximize their reimbursements is important. Callie, would you like to kick us off with regards to this wonderful engagement session that symplr hosts?
Yes, absolutely. Just to let everyone know, our next Engage conference is happening in Denver on September 19th and 20th. Donna, if you want to advance to the next slide. It is free for all symplr users to attend. If you are not currently a symplr customer, you can pay a small fee to join us in Denver as well. And you can earn 9 NAMS CEU hours with us during that conference. You also have one-on-one opportunities with key members of our symplr staff, anyone from the product team to our VP and GM of our entire product, our provider management business unit in general, everyone, we have quite a few leadership positions that will be there in attendance at the conference. There are trainings on any of symplr's products. There are roundtable opportunities for you to talk with your peers, There's also a startup of a user group that we will be starting up for that region, along with networking and also sitting in a ton of classes by Donna and some other fantastic guest speakers. If you can't make it to Denver, we're also having another one in Nashville this December to close out the year after NAMS. If you're wanting to hear more about it, you can go to symplr.com/engage2019 for details.
Yes, and Callie, I do encourage all of our listeners to please seriously consider attending the 2 remaining engagement sessions you have left. We really make education fun. We offer educational toys. We have interactive exercises, work groups. So please, if your schedule can accommodate it, give it a try. You won't regret it. So with that, I would like to open up the microphone. Actually, I guess it's not really the microphone. I guess it's the chat box for Q&A. So I'm going to ask Callie again, could you help facilitate that? And any one of your speakers who wants to speak up and respond to the question, we're all ears.
All right, here's one of the first ones. We have had a couple come through. I would like to mention to everyone, if we do not get to your question during this Q&A, I will be sending a list of the questions to Donna, Dina, and Yesenia, and they will be able to reach out to you with their answers. Also, another reminder, you will be getting a download of the slides that you saw today and be able to watch the recording within 4 business days at symplr.com. We will also be sending you an email with this link. And also, we are still awaiting NAM's approval. It was submitted for 1 CEU hour, but I have not heard back from them. When I do, I will send out an email to all of the attendees today with that certificate attached. All right, first question. How do you handle follow-ups when you're trying to get an effective date for your providers, but the insurance reps you are talking to give you conflicting information?
That's a good question. I would say maybe to get a supervisor involved. That's a tough question when you get conflicting information, and I've definitely had that happen before. Yesenia, do you have anything to add?
Yes, so if you are making a call and you have one rep telling you one thing, then write down the date they gave you and then ask them for a reference call number. And the same for the second person. Say, okay, I'm going to write down your name, the date and time that you're giving me, and please give me a reference call number. So then there's always a way to backtrack into any kind of denial or any kind of question in terms of effective date.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I know based upon feedback that we've gotten at other live programs, suggestions by our colleagues say, hey, sometimes you're getting an answer that just doesn't feel right, call back and see if you get another representative who will give you a different answer. I don't know that when that has been offered, we've never gotten feedback that wasn't an effective strategy. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's what I've heard from our colleagues. Callie, any other questions?
Yes, we do. Sorry, I'm sorting through. We have a lot of people saying thank you. This is wonderful material. All right. I think we covered this on the slide, but just in case, can you repeat the information entities, Becker's and revenue cycle, etc.?
Oh, yes, for the signing up for those newsletters, those specific newsletters?
Yes.
So one of them that we all agree is a great one is Becker's. So it's B as in boy, ECKERS. So you can find them online. And then they have a direct little checkbox that says sign up for the newsletter, and then you fill out their fields. And Dina, do you want to speak on the Rev cycle that you like?
Right. It's called Rev, R-E-V, cycleintelligence.com. And there you can, as Yesenia mentioned, you can sign up for different types of resources that you're looking to get information for. You can sign up for, just depending on what type of information you're looking for. You can set your preferences.
Wonderful. All right. This one's a bit long, so everyone bear with me, and it will probably be our last question of the day. I worked for a consulting firm that has clients nationwide, which means dealing with many different states. A huge roadblock was locating network managers for certain payers in specific states. They seem to be top secret for some payers. Any tips on how to locate these more quickly?
I don't know how if I want to share this tip broadcast because there might be some payers online, but I usually kind of stalk people through LinkedIn. I hate to say it, but I don't stalk, but I guess it could be considered that. I'll go onto LinkedIn, and hopefully now they don't turn their profiles to private, but I'll go onto LinkedIn and I'll try to find, and this isn't the catch-all answer for every situation, but I do go to LinkedIn and I'll search the payer name, and then on the payer's LinkedIn company page, there's a little link that will take you to a list of their employees that are on LinkedIn. And you can sort of scroll through there. I know it's time consuming, but you can scroll through there and see if there are network managers, people who have listed their title as network manager, because those are the people, the network manager typically are the people who are handling the loading of the provider information into directories and managing that demographic information rather than being the actual contractor or the actual credentialing, overseeing the credentialing function. Usually those network managers are the ones who are ensuring that the provider's information is loaded correctly. And those are the people that you go to if they're not, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
All right, wonderful. Well, I think that's about all we have time for today. I want to be respectful of people's afternoons. On behalf of symplr, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. Donna, is there anything y'all would like to say in closing?
No, I really enjoyed this experience, drilling down more. We're going to be offering even more more specialized payer enrollment sessions. So please stay tuned. We're listening to you. And I know you mentioned, Callie, that you're going to be sending us any of the additional questions. Please know that your speaker team, we evaluate all of those. And at some point, you're going to see answers to your questions incorporated into the content of future programs. So just again, thanks for your loyalty, and stay tuned for more things coming your way.
All right, thank you everyone, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Bye.